Hey guys, it's Mike Wise from Effect back again, and today we thought we'd get on with a real demonstration that's showing some of our master data management capability and integration between systems. So to find out a little bit more information about this, you can go to our homepage as well here on Universal Platform, and it talks about some of our capability. Specifically, there's three domains of capability here, ranging from information landscape, which is accessing all of the data in different places around your organization or in the internet. System integration, which is more about integrating your systems through people, processes, and tools, and then data management, which is really about modeling things and being able to transform data from one shape to another and moving around the organization. We have a fourth capability or domain, which is application development, and it's all built in with inside Universal Platform. So please do move through to the website and check that out. So today we're looking at an example which is really going to talk about trying to integrate SalesForce and Sugar CRM. And the whole idea here is that we just need some information from a spreadsheet move into each of those systems and for information to move from those systems back into a central repository and so on. The other aspect of this demonstration is really about showing some of the collision that can happen once you've defined a master data model and then allow the execution piece of the universal platform to occur. So to begin, we need to log into the platform. We can just simply do that by logging in. Again, this platform is being provided to us through our SaaS, which is running on Macquarie Tel equipment in their virtual data center, and it's one of the most secure data centers on the planet. It's actually a Type 3 rated data center with very limited downtime to reach that rating, and for us it's the most ideal location to provide a service like that and offer this sort of capability to customers. So what I've done is essentially located some pipelines. I've just categorized these pipelines, which is the workflow mechanism we use to execute activity on the platform, into a category, and I've simply got a list of pipelines that I wish to execute one by one to really show how interaction and working with a master data model works in reality. Further, I've got my reporting piece over here, which I can show. This report page is generated by the Universal Platform itself, so it's in real time, so I can just press this reports, and I've got like a little portal I could go to. If I was working in an organization, it would be quite normal to see such a thing. The other is I've got a tab up here which I can select, which lists out all of these people. Now this particular report is generated in real time using our templating engine. The data that's being seen here is coming from a data hub that we've built in advance. And what we've done for effect is actually show that some of these contacts or people inside this report are actually coming from SalesForce and Sugar CRM at the same time. The other is that we've just ordered this report and applied some nice formatting. So the way to start here is I really have a requirement where I'm using a spreadsheet. So the best place to go is that we keep everything in Google Drive. Most organizations may be using Google Apps for all of their business needs. In Google Drive, we've got a contact spreadsheet. So this contact spreadsheet is being used as a part of a source, a single point of truth, if you wish, for accessing or importing user information about a contact into our data hub. So what I'll do is create a person, and we know them by first name, and you can read the fields here: first name, email, last name, email, phone number, organization, and title. So I'll just type in first name, so I'll say JJ, last name is Abrams, and their email could be j.abrams at startrek.com, and their phone number could be like 0423151197. And that's about it. I won't enter in a title here, and I've got an organization. Now the good thing about Google Spreadsheets is that information is now saved in real time with the sheet up in the cloud. So immediately I can start work with this. So over here in our reports, if I press people or refresh, I can see I've got a last name ordered list of people that are sitting inside my data hub. in OmniEffect we call data hubs sometimes a synchronized source of truth, or a persisted model, which means that you've got somewhere else in the organization storing a view of all of the data that's moving between the systems for comparison needs and for master data modeling to execute against. So the first step to do is basically bring the contact that I've entered in here into the platform. Now to achieve that, I simply can run one of our pipelines here. It's just a workflow piece to be able to bring them in. So I've labeled it Google Spreadsheet to Hub Import. Notice that you've got some nice categories here. I go into the editor. And a part of the editing feature here is that we've got reading from the spreadsheet. So it's simply going to use my credential here. It's going to target that contact spreadsheet. It's targeting sheet 1. It's picking up a header row of 1. And it's targeting a cell range from A1 to F2, which we see here is from A1 to F2. So that's how spreadsheets work, and that's how we can import them. After that, we've got a really neat node here. It's going to carry out our interaction utilizing the master data model plus what we call a data format for the transform to be able to bring that into our little data hub. So I can just press run here. This is all running within the cloud. A completely cloud solution, by the way, since I'm using a spreadsheet from the cloud and a complete data platform that's running in the cloud to mash this data together. So that's now run. It's given me a nice tick here and say that it's completed. And if I simply move back to my reports and press refresh, I now see that J.J. Abrams has appeared inside my data hub. Specifically, this guy has no SalesForce ID or Sugar ID simply because I haven't introduced him into those systems. So over here I've got Sugar CRM on this tab with a bunch of users, and on this tab I've got SalesForce all logged in, ready for me to go and move this contact in. So we can now return back to the next category and go through to try and take that information from our data hub into SalesForce into Sugar CRM. So I'll execute hub to Sugar CRM and then select the editor. So the steps are is that it's querying from the data hub, and then it's going to basically talk to the Sugar CRM, and it specifically is working with a module of contacts. And there's very limited amount of information that Sugar CRM needs to know about us importing the data. And we just simply ask it to run. It's running in the background. This is executing as a specific job against a server or an instance of the platform itself, and it's carrying out the work of updating Sugar CRM. That's now completed. So that had to actually interact with a separate server over the internet and be able to put that information into Sugar CRM. So if I look for JJ, I see that Sugar CRM has now been updated. It contains the J.J. Abrams and an email of Star Trek. So if I select J.J. Abrams, I can now drill down and see a little bit more information that he's got a title with no title, and he's got a mobile phone number which has been entered and a primary email address which has been entered, which is great. So what we're going to do is also go and put that into SalesForce through the same process. Now normally you wouldn't do it individually. All of these processes would be, or these workflows would be running in the background all the time through our scheduling engine. And so for most people, given that both SalesForce or Sugar CRM doesn't contain any push technology, essentially it would just be running on a schedule to move all that information. So here we are, we're going into SalesForce. I come through into the editor, and again it's the same process. It's querying some data from the hub, and then it's just simply saving a record based on the ID and contact running up into SalesForce. It's just that simple for users to drag and drop that kind of interaction with an external system. So that's executed. SalesForce indeed has come back with some information. It's given us a log here, and it's given us a context, and it's basically told us that yes, SalesForce has stored that there were no errors, and there was essentially an ID that came back from SalesForce. So after a bit of time, it's interesting to point out that SalesForce has an indirect insert process, so it does not immediate as it was with what we experienced in Sugar CRM. It's actually taken some time to inject that record into SalesForce itself. So that's an interesting point to make, is that not all updates are immediate, so it's a synchronized effort, and that when you're combining systems together, you have to understand how each of the system works in terms of their updates and times for update as well. So what we're taking out of the equation here is the interaction, and that was immediate as we saw. However, it took some time for SalesForce to actually inject that record and to make it appear. So we're now in a situation where I've taken a contact from a spreadsheet. I've also got a contact from that spreadsheet now sitting in my hub, who's also sitting inside Sugar CRM and also sitting inside SalesForce all at the same time, which was carried out for us with no developers being involved in that interaction. So the next step is to be able to utilize our master data model in terms of bringing them back in for a synchronization activity. So to do that, we move over to Data Manager. We select Data Models. And what I've done here is I've built a complete data model called Human Resources. Inside Human Resources, we define up what's known as a spot, a master spot, and then we can allocate and create what's called models. And these, under the model, you have entities. And specifically, we've got an entity for connections, for an organization, and for person. But in order to talk about this a little further, I do need to touch on what we call spots in advance to make you aware that when we read from a location or a source of data, we actually tag it with what we call a single point of truth. So a single point of truth is just a unique emitter of data. It means that we can say that from this location, this data is unique. And what we do is we, within an organization, tag, and it can be at any level. So for example, a spreadsheet containing work times is unique if it was generated from a particular project site. So we could create a spot which identified that spreadsheet from that project worksite. In our case, for this demo, we're just simply tagging at a higher level, which is, did it come from SalesForce or did it come from Sugar CRM? And it's quite simple. So we can simply say SalesForce, yes, and it came from a particular part of the organization. In this case, our division was OmniEffect. So once we know the spot, we allocate the spots against the particular data model itself, but we can go down into the entity and allocate a spot against the entity itself. So in general, our person record, which models how people work in an organization, so what we're trying to do is essentially have metadata which represents what we think a person looks like, as opposed to what SalesForce thinks a person looks like, or Sugar CRM for that matter, or Microsoft or Oracle. So from here we can tag at an entity level, but within the entity itself we can go through and then define various attributes we think are relevant to our person. And this is very much similar to a data modeling experience like any other, but what's more specific is that here we've got our first name, our last name, and I'll draw your attention to title here. And if you go through and edit on the title, notice that we've actually got a spot allocated to the attribute, and we've got further detail and specifics about constraints on how attributes work. What's really specific about this is we've got inside Universal Platform in our MDM a per field spot recognition. So we say that it's not just the entity person which is ruled by a particular system, but it's actually different fields within inside the model which represents uniqueness. So further to that point, it's interesting to note that we not just have these attributes, but what we want to do with our master data model is validate against it, is to be able to protect it. And it's kind of like a sieving activity which says bad data on one side and good data out the other side. We do this simply because we want to protect how the data is worked upon, and in order to achieve that we have these things called validators. By default we have some generic validators. One's called collision, others for regular expressions, and another is a complete C# code validation piece. If you're using C#, that means that we've got a compiled way of being able to have complete developer-based business rules, if you want to go to that extent, written and burnt into your data model. Most commonly, people use the collision rule. So if we look at title, which I drew your attention to just before, and drill down, you see that the collision rule and the validation for the collision rule is basically saying that the data attribute title, the source of truth is actually Sugar CRM. So what we're saying is that Sugar CRM over here, which has no title for JJ, is basically the source of truth for title for a person inside our organization. So the next step is to be able to utilize the master data model inside the universal platform for bringing the information together. So what's unique about our master data models is that we also tag single points of truth around the organization in order to give the data model a hint of the unique sources of data throughout an organization. To do that, we click on spots here, single points of truth, and start defining which they would be within the organization. So in our case for SalesForce, we simply have SalesForce and Sugar CRM likewise. However, you may wish to be more specific. So for example, you could have a spreadsheet which is tracking times recorded for a project in a specific location. So you could indeed call it a new spot, which would be work times in Bundaberg branch. And it's because you've simply said that there was this single point of truth out there. It's a part of the documentation phase, it's a part of master data modeling that's required in order for us to understand in more detail the data moving inside an organization. From here, we create a new data model. So we have one pre-created for ourselves called human resources. The data model itself has a top or higher order spot, and then specifically from there you create entities underneath that model. Entities generally are a metadata concept about the sorts of data ideas or concepts that move inside an organization. So in our case here we've got connections, organization, person, for example. So you could indeed not just have a HR model, you could have a finance model which was tracking purchase orders and purchase order lines and headers and details. And really what you're doing here is being able to start the process of analyzing the sorts of data and data of interest that you need inside an organization. You're also molding the data to your business needs, so you understand that specifically in the case of a person, that first name and last name are of interest to you. So part of being able to define an entity, you can then specifically say that this entity is locked against a spot itself. So in this case, the default spot for people is our SalesForce system. From there, inside the entity, you're able to define up or add attributes, and it's very much a data modeling experience that we offer here. So you can simply add an attribute and then configure that attribute to be whatever you need. So in the case of title here, I can then drill down into title. I can actually go and set some very specific details and primary key elements against it, or foreign key elements against it, or an identity element, or something like a sequence, for example. So much a similar activity to what you would experience in database modeling, but it's more meta information about what we need to know about data moving through this data model. The final piece here is that we also at the attribute level identify a spot. In this case, title is being driven by SalesForce, so we're saying that SalesForce is the king of title for people in the organization. That's really important because it's a key differentiator from many other systems who only track at the entity level. We do this specifically because we're offering a capability called validation at the data model level, which is a coarse-grained way of protecting your data model or master data model from specific areas that could occur whilst importing information, whilst targeting specific systems and combining that information together in one hit. So inside the validators here we have some capability called collision rules, expression validation rules, and other more detailed ways of applying validation rules. But we'll look at two in particular that we've applied to person here. If you see title collision rule, and we drill down into that, we see that the validator has been updated to say that this specific rule looks at the title and says that the title is actually, the source of truth for the title is Sugar CRM, as opposed to the previous rule which was telling us that no, SalesForce was the king of title. So what we're giving to Universal Platform is some general ideas about how indeed to understand data when it sees it passing via the master data model. So we'll have a look at mobile phone as well. So mobile phone has a collision rule on itself, and its validator is saying that the mobile phone, in fact, the source of truth is SalesForce. So indeed we've got two different systems ruling at an attribute level two different specific pieces of information. One is the title and the other is the mobile phone. So we've got enough information from our metadata about person that's running inside of our human resources master data model in order for us to be able to understand data when it's moving between systems. So that's really important because we can understand how collision or how validation and cleaning of data works inside of our organization. And that's a non-developer experience. A standard business analyst would know these rules straight away because they deal in the data and they understand the way the business works. So the circumstances by which that came about was it could have been that Sugar CRM here was a part of a different organization, and there could be a merger or an acquisition of another company bringing that information in. And quite simply, this company was very good at maintaining titles as opposed to the target company who was not good at maintaining titles. To demonstrate how this is going to work, essentially I just need to update the titles. So I've got JJ Abrams here in Sugar CRM. I'll just simply update his title to No Way Jose. And then I'll go over to SalesForce and update the same record. And SalesForce has a nice in-place editing feature where I can type in the value. So I can just say Star Fleet Commander. Press save. So what we have is a situation where the Sugar CRM title is different from this SalesForce title. Now, to prove how it's all working, we can return to our Data Hub report and press refresh. We see that both SalesForce and Sugar IDs are not located there, and also the title is missing. So to draw out what's going to go on here, I've got another set of pipelines or workflows that are going to bring that information in. So in the first step, I'm going to bring in the Sugar CRM contact. So the next step is to carry out the importing of the data from SalesForce and Sugar CRM and essentially observe the collision that's going on based on the master data model rules that we've applied. So we know that Sugar CRM is actually king of titles for our system. So what I'll do is bring in the SalesForce first. So what we're expecting to see is Starfleet Commander turn up for our JJ Abrams title. So I can go into SalesForce, Editor, and the same process applies. So it's going to grab active records for SalesForce, bringing in the contacts, all of the contacts that are available to me based on those rules, and then carry out a function which is unique to Universal Platform called collision or collide. Essentially it's targeting a persistent model, which is just a database connection. It could be Oracle or SQL Server or MySQL, and it's just a place for us to compare and contrast data as we move through the human resources model and look at all of the information being provided to us through what we call the data format. And this is using SalesForce to the hub. So essentially we can press run on that. It carries out the interaction for us all in the cloud. And we note that we've received some errors. That's okay. These errors are a part of the import process, so we've actually got 58 good records and 6 bad records. We've updated 55 records and inserted 3. So there's been some collision work done for us based on a master data model existing in this process. Note, what we're offering here is an all-in-one platform, so you're able to go from definition of the metadata information and be able to execute it to be able to carry out some kind of activity. A fast way to confirm it's there is simply just update our report, and we now see that Starfleet Commander has been introduced. Further, JJ Abrams here has been tagged with the SalesForce ID, so he's definitely in SalesForce now. And we're in a situation where our synchronized source of truth, our data hub, is in sync with what SalesForce is thinking. So the next step is to now run our Sugar CRM pipeline. So we'll bring in Sugar CRM. We know that there's competition on the title. So likewise, we go through into the editor. It's going to bring back all of the entries. It's got limits, it's got other specifics and characteristics about how it interacts, and then it goes through the collide process once more. Again, we're using a data format of Sugar CRM to hub. I press run. Once more, we see that there is now some collision going on, and that we've had 58 good records, 16 bad records, 57 updates, and 1 insert. So there's been synchronization occur using the data model in play. If I go back to my report, I should see that No Way Jose has been set as the new title. But mobile phone didn't change. Well, that's obvious because there's the same mobile phone. Now what happens if I change mobile phone over inside SalesForce? So I just change that to a 6, for example, and press save. What I can then do is simply run the systems integration items, and I run SalesForce to the hub again. Now normally what we would do in a production sense is these activities would be running all the time in the background in the cloud, constantly grinding data together. As we see more data, the hub or synchronized source of truth improves over time, and so our data just gets better. If again I refresh this report, you see that the mobile phone number has changed, yet the title is still what's known in Sugar CRM. This is the essence, this is the result of a master data modeling process. What's significant here is that no developers were involved in the actual solution itself. And that's very, very significant. So, and to summarize, we went from importing contact through a cloud-based solution, which was Google Spreadsheet, bringing that information into a data hub, which is a synchronized source of truth, pushing that information between Sugar CRM and SalesForce, and then being able to synchronize and update that information based on rules built by a master data management system, and then getting a result, which is a complete, accurate record sitting in the middle of all of those systems. Note that we are known in SalesForce and Sugar at the same time for that particular record. This is the essence of Universal Platform. What it attempts to achieve is a system integration process, a master data management process or data management process, but put in the center, make first class a modeling activity, a cleaning activity, and unification of your data. So next time we'll talk about more specific issues and topics using Universal Platform as the way to carry out all of your integration needs.